So when you think of the word wisdom, there's one name that almost always comes up from the ancient world: King Solomon. His story is, it's legendary. We're talking about a king so wise that leaders from all over the known world would travel for months just to hear what he had to say. But his story, it's also a massive paradox. It's a tragedy, really. How could the wisest man who ever lived fall so hard?
I mean, just look at this contrast. It's night and day. On one side, you've got his peak. This is the guy who built God's temple, had wisdom like no one else, and brought about this golden age of wealth and peace. But then you have the fall, a man who ends his life worshiping other gods, whose choices literally tear his kingdom in two, and leaves behind this awful legacy of civil war.
And that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? How does a man who is given this supernatural level of insight end up making choices that, looking back, just seem so incredibly foolish? It's a puzzle, and that's what we're going to try and piece together today.
To figure this out, we've got to go back, way back, to a sort of blueprint, a rule book, if you will, that was written for any king of Israel long before Solomon was even a thought. A rule book that, it seems, he completely forgot about.
This blueprint comes from the book of Deuteronomy. Get this, hundreds of years before Israel even had a king, this code was laid out. It was like a preventative guide, anticipating all the ways a king could mess things up and telling him exactly how to stay on track.
And the code itself was incredibly simple. It basically boiled down to three main don'ts. First, don't build up a huge army, especially by getting horses from Egypt. Second, don't marry a bunch of wives, particularly from other nations, because they'll turn your heart away. And third, don't just hoard tons of gold and silver for yourself. 3 simple rules. That's it.
But here's the real kicker, the most important instruction of all. The king was supposed to personally, with his own hand, write a copy of this law, and then he had to read it every single day of his life. The point wasn't just to know the rules, it was to keep them right in front of your face, constantly. If Solomon had just done that one thing, wow, his story could have been totally different.
So, the big question is, how did the wisest man in the world actually stack up against this super simple checklist? Well, let's take a look at the evidence.
Okay, first up, the rule about horses. Solomon didn't just get a few. He got 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses. And guess where he got a lot of them from? You guessed it, Egypt. The one place Deuteronomy specifically said not to go. So that's strike one, a big one.
All right, next, what about the rule against piling up wealth? The scripture says he made silver so common in Jerusalem that it was like rocks on the ground. He totally ignored that warning. So that's rule number 3, completely broken. Strike 2.
And then we get to the second rule, maybe the most devastating one of all. Don't acquire many wives. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That's 1,000. 1,000. And yeah, many of them were from foreign nations, the exact thing the law warned would lead him astray. Strike 3, he's out.
You see, this wasn't just one bad day or one bad decision. It was a pattern, a slow, steady, inch-by-inch descent where he just systematically broke every single safeguard that was meant to protect him. He didn't just trip, he deliberately walked off the path, one step at a time. But that makes you wonder, doesn't it? A pattern has to start somewhere. Where was that first step off the path? We've got to find that first little compromise, the moment that evil seed, so to speak, was planted. If this whole downfall was a slow slide, what was the first domino to fall? What was the one decision that set this entire tragedy into motion?
And you can pinpoint it right at the very beginning of his reign. His kingdom is barely established, and one of his first big foreign policy moves is to make an alliance with Egypt. How? By marrying the pharaoh's daughter. Now, at the time, this probably looked like a brilliant political strategy, but it was also the first clear violation of that king's code. This one marriage set the stage for the other 999 that followed.
And that's the scary thing about compromise, isn't it? It almost always looks like a smart move, a good deal. An alliance with Egypt, the superpower of the day. What could possibly go wrong? But that one savvy decision was the first crack in the foundation of his entire life, and it made all the other cracks possible.
And that first compromise, it leads us right to the heart of the matter. Literally, the ancient writers said Solomon's problem wasn't just that he made bad choices. The problem was the condition of his heart. It was no longer whole.
So what does a whole heart even mean? Well, in Hebrew, it's this incredibly rich concept. It means being perfect, completely true, fully devoted, and a 100% faithful. It's this idea of a singular, undivided allegiance, where there's no room for anything else to compete for your loyalty. There's a great way to think about this from Dr. John Oswalt. He asks, how do you get the air out of a glass? You can't scoop it out or shake it out. It's simple. You fill the glass with water. The water just displaces the air. A heart that's whole toward God is so full of that one thing, there's just no room left for anything else to get in. See, a whole heart puts every single part of your life, your job, your family, your money, under one authority. But a divided heart, it's trying to serve multiple masters. Solomon literally started bowing down to the gods of other nations. The source material here suggests we do the exact same thing, we just don't build statues. We bow to the modern gods of pleasure, wealth, and power. So what happened? What was the final result of this divided heart in this lifetime of small compromises? Well, the story doesn't end well for Solomon, but believe it or not, it's not a total loss. The final verdict from God was this mix of harsh judgment and a really surprising promise. The judgment was pretty severe. The kingdom was going to be ripped away from his family. But, and this is a huge but, there was a caveat, a promise. And it was made all for the sake of Solomon's father, David. The destruction wouldn't be complete. One tribe would be left standing.
And that just raises this fascinating question. I mean, in the face of this epic failure, why save anything? Why not just tear the whole thing down and start over? Why preserve this one little piece from the wreckage of Solomon's kingdom?
Well, the source material points to three really profound reasons. First, it was a reward, a way to honor the memory of David, who had been so faithful. Second, God had made a promise to David that his dynasty would last, and God always keeps his promises. And third, and this is the most important one, that remnant had to survive to preserve the family line for the future coming of the Messiah. And this brings us to the final takeaway. Solomon's life is just this massive, powerful, cautionary tale. He had the greatest beginning anyone could ever ask for. But it's not how you start that really matters. This quote says it all. There are no prizes given out for good beginnings. The trophies are given when you end the race. It's just a challenging reminder for all of us that wisdom isn't some gift you just get once. It's a path you have to choose to walk every single day, all the way to the end.